Hey guys, Simon Bryson here, and today I want to talk about exactly how you actually save up the money for a down payment, how much do you put down, and how do you find out exactly how much house you can actually spend money on, and what they'll actually qualify you when you actually go to the bank to get a pre-approval letter, okay? In this video, we're going to cover everything. By the way, okay, when I was in college, I asked my professor, hey, how did you go ahead and buy your first house? He said, Tommy, it's easy. What's hard to actually get is the down payment for your house to the point where you're breaking piggy banks, looking for pennies around the house and trying to find every single dollar to go ahead and pay for the down payment for the house. But in reality, if you plan for it ahead of time and save up for it, you don't have to be scramping around and breaking your kids' piggy banks to then go ahead and buy a brand new house, okay? That's why I'm gonna cover everything in this video right here. And by the way, if you're new here, guys, I post videos every single day, so make sure to also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you're notified. And on top of that, also destroy, smash, annihilate the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It helps a lot. So thank you guys so much, okay? Just click like right below this video, and that helps a ton when it comes to the channel. Thank you guys so much. Now, the first thing is this, okay? Whenever you hear about a down payment, you usually hear about three types, okay? You hear about, hey, I'm gonna put down 0%, which is actually very unlikely. I'm gonna put down 3.5% with an FHA loan, or for example, I'm going to put down 20% to avoid a lot of the fees. So what are the pros and cons of putting down a small amount of money, or basically a large amount of money with basically around 20% or so, okay? The answer is this, okay? To actually get a loan that's 0% is actually very unlikely because basically you have no skin in the game, okay? No skin whatsoever. So if you actually don't pay, you never had any money in it whatsoever. So then the lender is taking a massive risk with you. So the likely chance of you actually getting a 0% loan is actually very low unless you're doing, for example, like flipping and you actually have collateral like another house, something like that. But in reality, a 0% loan is actually very unlikely. On top of that, although it's a very small amount of money, no money in a sense, guess what? You will have a very large payment every single month. So always consider that also, okay? Now, if you do put down, for example, a small amount of money, for example, a 3.5% loan, and that is an FHA loan, okay? If you actually get one of those, the answer is, well, these are very popular. And the good thing is that basically you don't require a lot of money to buy a property, only 3.5%. And on top of that, you can go ahead and buy a property with not the best credit score of around like 580 points, and boom, you're good to go. So you don't even need like a 600 or a 700, 580 is just fine. But the main con is this, okay? You will require to pay mortgage insurance premiums, MIP. Now that might range from around 1.5%, but then you also have other fees of like around 0.8%. So in reality, you might be looking at fees around 2% every single year of your total house value. So imagine if you have a house for like 100K and you have to pay around 2% every single year just in fees. In reality, that's around $2,000 every single year, plus your mortgage, plus the interest rate. So also keep that in mind. And by the way, one cool thing about an FHA loan, by the way, that stands for Federal Housing Authority. Ooh, very fancy, right? FHA. The answer is, the cool thing is that basically you can actually go out there and buy a 4-unit property and basically live in one, rent 3, and hopefully live free, okay? But in reality, that is also a massive risk because if somebody doesn't pay and you can't afford the mortgage, well, you might just go into default. So also keep that in mind. Risky because a low down payment means that basically your payments every single month are going to be high. And by the way, some people actually use FHA loans to basically go out there, buy an investment property, stay there for a year, then move out to another property, justify it, and then buy it there for 3.5%. And they keep doing that over and over again. And then boom, before you know it, they have a whole portfolio of real estate and they didn't put that much money in. It's all renting and it's also giving them money and it's also paying the mortgage itself because the tenants, the renters, are paying the mortgage themselves by paying you rent. But again, that's very risky, also complicated. So you might want to do research before you try to attempt this also. But now, what if you actually want to put down 20% on a down payment? Now, that is a lot of money. Although you might say, Tommy, that's not a lot of money. The answer is, yeah, it is a lot of money because basically, a $200,000 house is going to cost you a down payment of around like $40,000, which is a lot of money. $100,000, $20,000, $500,000, $100,000, okay? So the answer is it can get very expensive very quickly. So a 20% down payment is very expensive, but also if you do put down 20%, you do not require any mortgage insurance, whether it's private or whatever it is, okay? That's the cool thing. So you kind of waive that entire 1.5% fee every single year. By the way, mortgage insurance ranges from like 0.5 or 0.2% all the way up to 1.5%. So keep that in mind. And it's actually based on your credit score, how much money you're putting down, and on top of that, also your loan term and all the details, okay? So keep that in mind. Now tell me, how do I find out exactly how much money I'm going to pay in mortgage insurance? Well, the answer is, again, I'm going to give you guys all the websites, all the sources, and that way you know exactly what to do. Well, right here, link down below, is a website. This website is going to tell you exactly how much your mortgage insurance is actually going to be. So say, for example, you're going to buy a property. It's $400K. You put down 10%, that's $40K. You borrowed $360K, okay? And in reality, you're going to borrow the money for like around 30 years at a 3% interest rate, and you have a credit score of around 620 to 639. Very, very low, right? Very, very low. In reality, your PMI, private mortgage insurance, is going to be like around $282. Not that much money. By the way, that's every single month, which means that that's basically, guess what? $281 or $82 times 12. That's only around like $3,384. But usually it's supposed to be 1%, right? So if it's 1%, it should be like around $4,000. But in reality, because you don't have such a bad credit score, that's why it's like that. But say, for example, you have a great credit score of around 760, okay? If you calculate it, it'll be like around $84. Because again, it's based on your credit score, how much money you're putting down, but more importantly, how good are you with debt and how much of a risk are you really? So again, link down below, go test it out and go try it out with a calculator, and that way you find exactly how much money is actually going to cost you every single year mortgage insurance. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is basically, well, Tommy, okay, I get mortgage insurance, I get that putting down 20% is best, but what about, for example, how do I find out exactly how much house can I actually qualify for? Like, how much money is the bank actually going to give me to go out there and actually buy the home I actually want to buy? The answer is, well, they're going to use a formula called debt to income ratio, and that means exactly what it sounds like, okay? How much money do you owe when you compare it to your income? If you owe way too much money, they're not going to lend you a lot of money. If you owe way too much money, they're not going to lend you anything. They're not going to approve you whatsoever, and you're not going to be able to actually go out there and buy a home. That's the idea, okay? So Tommy, how do I find out exactly what my debt to income ratio actually is? Well, I have a calculator right here, but I also have a link down below to basically do it online also. But my calculator right here is going to show you exactly, well, how much income do I need to make to qualify for the house that I actually want to buy based on all the calculations I actually found online. So for example, okay, say you actually found a house. Now, say for example, the house you want to buy costs you around $400,000. You're putting down 10%, $40K, and the mortgage is around like maybe like $1,700 every single month. Well, with the debt to income ratio, usually looking for a ratio of around 43%. That's what they usually want. Now, to understand this, all you have to do is put it into my calculator here, or basically with your calculator at home. The answer is, okay, you put down 1,700 and also 43%, and then all you do is basically divide the mortgage by the percentage, and that's going to give you how much income you need to make every single month to be able to afford that mortgage right there at a 43% level. On top of that, you multiply it by 12 to get the annual, and that way you find that basically to afford a mortgage of around 1,700, you need around $47,000 in income. That is how it works. And that's how crazy it actually is, okay? So imagine, for example, that's not all you have, because on top of that, you also need home insurance. That's around $175. You might also have some property taxes, around $466. But if you also have, for example, credit card debt, student loan debts, well, they grab all that stuff to calculate your back-end income to debt ratio, and they find out exactly how much all your debt would be, and if you can actually afford it. If it's a no, they will not approve you for the house you actually want to buy. In this case right here, guys, I will need to have around $67,000 in income to be able to afford a house. Is around $400K, and also cover my other bills. That is the idea. And by the way, that gives me room for other discretionary income, for example, like buying food, paying for my car bill, whatever it is, okay? By the way, when they do this, they grab, for example, your car payments, your student loan debts, your personal loans. They grab everything to find out exactly how much money do you owe, and if you can actually afford the entire thing. By the way, you have front end income to debt ratio, that's basically just the mortgage and your income, and then you have the back end, which is basically everything you actually owe, and then divided by your income to find exactly if you can actually afford the house you actually want to. Now, if this sounds confusing, don't worry about it. Just use a calculator online, and that way you find out exactly if you can actually afford the house or if you can't afford the house. Now remember, you're looking for a 43% debt to income ratio. That's the accepted standard usually. Anything beyond that is going to be risky, and you're going to be paying a high premium, or for example, they might just reject you. So keep that in mind. Now, we understand putting down a down payment that's high is good. Making sure you can actually afford the house with the debt to income ratio is actually very good also. And by the way, one more thing is this, guys, okay? Whenever you're buying a house, the bank might actually give you a lot more money than you can actually afford. But my math is always, hey, I'll always buy something, for example, a property, as long as it's not costing me more than 30% of my after-tax income every single month. So for example, if I make $4,000, I'm not going to spend more than 30% of my income, and that's around $1,200. That way, I'm good to go, and I'm not worried about like, hey, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to afford this? And by the way, $1,200 is not that much money. Just like buy a house like around 200K or like 250, like 300K. That way you can actually afford it, but actually not have a burden of a house on you. Now, the last thing I want to talk about exactly, Tommy, how do I save up for the down payment? Because basically this thing sounds like it's very expensive. Now, most likely right now in your head, you probably have a deadline. Tommy, I want to buy a house by next year, or the year after that, or tomorrow, or this year. The answer is, if you rush into this, you're going to rush into a brick wall, because basically you're buying something that's going to take you around 30 years to pay off. So it's going to be very, very expensive. So you want to make sure you don't rush into it, and you calculate everything so everything is sound and everything is solid, okay? So for example, let's say you want to buy a house and you have a deadline and you're also saving up a specific amount of money, okay? So here's how I would do the math myself, okay? So say for example, every single month, I make around $5,000, right? That's around a 60K income every single year. A lot of money if you ask me. Now, say I'm actually able to save half of my income every single year. So I'm able to save around half of this divided by 2. I'm saving around $2,500 every single month. Multiplied by 12, I'm saving around 30K every single year of my income. Great. Now, say for example, the house I want to buy costs $500,000. I'm going to put down 20%. How much is that? That's going to be around $100,000 down payment, which means, okay, what's $100,000 divided by 30K, which I'm saving up every single year? The answer is, guess what? $30,000 is going to take me around 3.33 years to be able to save for that house and be done with it, have the down payment, and be ready to go. But on top of that, I always recommend when you're buying a house and saving up for a down payment, you want to have a separate bank account. That way you don't get tempted to spend that money on something else. For example, I recommend Wealthfront or SoFi Money. That way your money is separating and you're not able to spend it and just transfer it over very quickly, okay? That's what I like to do. Now, the main thing is this, okay? The down payment is not the only cost, because on top of that, you also need the closing fees, which usually are around 2 to 5%. So imagine again, a $500,000 house, well, on top of that, I'm going to need around 2% for closing fees, right? Or 2.5%. So times 0.025, that's around $12,000 additional. On top of that, I also need an emergency fund of around 3 to 6 months in case I lose my job. That way I'm solid, because for example, imagine if you bought a house back in February before the pandemic and then boom, you can't afford it. That is a nightmare. So the point is this, okay? Buying a house is going to be very expensive, and it's also going to take some time as long as you're actually doing it the correct way. If, for example, you buy a house you can't afford, you don't put down enough money, and it's costing you way too much money every single month, well, if something happens, for example, you lose your job, you're going to be in big trouble. So again, I recommend buy a house. A, you can afford it. B, save up all the expenses, the down payment, the closing fees, and also an emergency fund of around like 6 months or 3 months. That way you're good to go. When you buy that house, you're good. You don't have to worry whatsoever, okay? That's the idea. But guys, comment down below and let me know, was the video helpful? Did it help you understand everything? And by the way, right now, I'm saving for a house also. The house I want is around 500K. I'm going to put that around 20%, so I need to go around 100K, plus the closing fees around like 12,500. So this whole example here is kind of like my example, and that's how I do everything. all my math and everything. So the answer is, in like around 2 years or so, I'll be ready. I'll buy my house. Everything's gonna be fine, but I'm not gonna rush into it, because basically, how do you rush into buying something that costs like 500K, where even like a 1% mistake is like $5,000? The answer is, you don't want to rush into it, okay? But comment down below. Let me know if it was helpful or not helpful. Comment down below. Let me know. As always, if you like this video right here, we'll like this video. On top of that, also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you're notified, and also follow me on Instagram. And on top of that, if you want to watch another video basically on how I budget my money and how I like spread it around, the answer is watch this video right here. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace. Mortgage insurance, down payment, debt to income ratio, and also saving up for the down payment, the closing fees, and also an emergency fund. All this stuff, very important.